welcome everybody. I'm glad to be able to speak to you all. We have guests with us for today's call on this particular Zoom call, and we are also going live on LinkedIn. So anybody who's joining us from any of those areas, I want to give you a warm welcome. My name is Dan Beaudry. I run an organization called LDP Connect. We are the community of early talent development professionals. And I'm here with my wonderful colleague, Julie Grzeda from GE Aerospace, who I'll introduce in just a little while. We're going to tackle a question today called, should you start a new early talent development program? And this conversation with Julie is part of a broader series that we began to run at the beginning of this year, tackling some of the big questions that we have in our early talent development space. And this particular question of should you start a new program pops up in lots of different contexts, right? Sometimes it's a very strategic decision that's considered at the top and sort of pushed down to have somebody build and construct. Sometimes it's a pop-up request. Sometimes people say, hey, programs look great. Should we start one or not? And what we're going to talk about today is, when does it make sense to start a program? And when might it not make sense to start a program? How to know the difference and how to navigate guiding your organization through those particular decisions. So it's something that we all deal with. And if you're a new practitioner, it's something that you might be dealing with soon. So before we dive into that topic, just a couple of odds and ends. This conversation is being recorded. This conversation is live on LinkedIn. And what we will do with the content once it's done is we will put it in our library so members can go in and learn some of the wisdom that we uncover today. Everybody's muted by default. We will be able to have some questions at the end. I imagine our conversation today going roughly 30 minutes. So, quick and easy is kind of what we're all after here. And so that's what that's the plan. Just as a last bit of housekeeping, I want to make everybody aware or remind everybody that we do have an annual conference coming up in May. It's called the LDP Summit. It is the annual conference of folks in early talent development program leadership. Today, I'm happy to say that we've got about 118 people signed up already, and we've got about 63 different companies. So great agenda, everything focused on early talent development programs. You should join us for that. We also have an ongoing calendar of calls like this that happen every month. Those are open calls. Love to have you join us for any of those. And so without further ado, I want to welcome Julie. Julie, delighted to have you. Julie is the Global Executive of Early Talent Development for GE Aerospace, and just a great overall person, in my view. We've known each other for a long time. And so I thank you for agreeing to share your wisdom with us today. Julie's kind of, I think, one of our master practitioners in our field. She has just a depth of experience that brings a lot of clout to her observations and her recommendations on things. And so this topic seemed particularly apt for her. Julie oversees multiple programs in multiple countries, multiple everything, right? Just big, multiple versions of everything happening simultaneously. So Julie, a big welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. I'm delighted to be here. This will be fun.
Awesome. Well, so just start out by giving us a little bit of background on kind of what led you into the early talent development space. Tell us about kind of where you come from.
Sure. Well, so I've had a long HR career. I started as an HR intern. I actually launched my career with GE on the HR leadership program, so another rotational program. And I did quite a wide variety of HR business partner roles, labor relations, different organ talent roles, sort of weaving a career in human resources and human resources leadership. I was at corporate. I was doing a role. I was the head of HR for IT and sourcing and lean and some corporate functions, if you will, which was a broad role of talent development, succession planning, building culture and capabilities. And part of that was that I had responsibility for the IT leadership program, one of our functional programs. And as
I remember that. Yeah,
yeah,
I think you were in that role when we first connected, right?
I was. I think we came and Chris Chris Catalano from
Right.
IT came and spoke at one of your, I think it was your second conference, if I'm not mistaken, but
Something like that in the early years. Yeah.
in the early years, that's right. So at that point in time, uh, I was doing the HR thing and just leaned into renovating and contemporizing what we needed from technology for GE. And we did curriculum upgrades. We really thought about bringing more things in-house and upping our technical capabilities, and recruiting for technology is no small thing. So we
Mm.
were rolling up our sleeves on all kinds of things. And my chief HR officer at some point asked me to lean into, uh, uh, with my peers, to lean into sort of some committees about improving our programs across the board, but each one sort of lived in the functions. And I guess the answer to your question is this ended up becoming an expanded role that I moved into to contemporize all the programs, bring them under one tent, really think about what the common backbone and operating principles were,
Mhm.
uh, and modernize our programs. That they were, they're beloved programs. We've had them and evolved them for a long time. But yeah, that's how I got into early career. And I will say, I think I was on the job maybe 2 or 3 months, and I inherited global university recruiting strategies as well. So it was really the wing to wing. I use a lot of plane analogies, I'm afraid, in my world, but it was the wing to wing in terms of just how do you get the right talent into the company, and how do we make the most of those first couple of years to launch careers.
And so in terms of the programs that you inherited or the ones that may have been created while you were there, were there any programs that were created while you were in that role? To what extent were you kind of shepherding things that had been created versus building new ones or
That's
determining
a
whether new
great
ones should
question.
go?
So we had quite a few programs, and what I would say is that they all went through renovation in one form or another. All the curriculum, all the uh, hiring related aspects. And we also had mid-career or experienced programs. So many of those were not rotational. They were just more cohort based. So we actually did some redesign to put some common curriculum in place for those. So there were new names, there were new configurations, there were new programs. Uh, Even at the most high potential, I was part of a team. I did not lead this, but I was part of a team to create our accelerated leadership program. So
Mhm.
I guess quite a number of reconfigurations, and in some cases, new programs.
Makes sense.
Hmm.
So, so tell us, I mean, when you talk about what an early talent program is, and you mentioned that some of them that you were dealing with were rotational and some were not. We talk about what a structured program is, I guess, as a definitional beginning of all this. How would you define it?
Well, I would use structured as part of my answer. A program for me, I mean, people use the word program in many contexts, and I'm not offended. They talk about a recruiting program or what, but in this context, we're talking about a pipeline building program, which means it's a structured approach to selecting and developing talent to progress with us. So, yeah, this means elements of what kind of experience are they going to get, which is
Mhm.
a huge part of it. What kind of mentoring or expert or other exposure, and what kind of curriculum or coursework or reading or other sort of enhanced, more formal training will be part of it.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, and I know in our community we've got this, broad spectrum of what programs look like, to being kind of high touch
Hmm.
and really involved to more of a, general experience kind of orientation. So it
Right,
feels like all
right.
those things kind of fall into that bucket. And so, a lot of us who are in early talent development think about programs as being a particular solution for something. I know you and I have spoken about this over the years. Sometimes people will say, we want to start a program. And when they're asked the question why, there's sometimes not a whole lot of firm substance behind that response. And so I'm wondering, can you share with us some of the good reasons to have a structured early talent development program? What are some of the things that a program is good at solving?
Yeah. So a few reflections, and I know there are probably things I won't think of, but I I guess it's good design. Like, if you're going to create a program, you should have a good purpose in mind. You don't build a house and say, I'm not sure what I'm going to do with this, right? So there's got to be some functionality, some specific goals in mind that in order to aim well or to design well. Um, I would say there are plenty of places where we need reliable pipelines of talent that are work ready for certain kinds of work in our companies, whether that's a specific destination role or a set of them, meaning more functional or broad in nature. But uh, programs could potentially give you the efficiency or scale or repeatability to do uh, talent readiness in a better way so that you're not sort of just ad hoc and inventing the wheel as you go in many different places. It can give you some defined value, both for the company in terms of a reliable source of talent and the organization building that it gives. It also can have a value for prospective candidates or those that would choose to go through that program or join a program. Uh, there could be advantages in designing something so that you're cost effective versus doing a lot of things ad hoc.
Mhm.
Um, and I guess often I find that the programs are potentially more retentive or allow you to accelerate talent development in some cases with the right focus. It does not mean every program is meant to be an accelerator, but all of those things are levers depending on the design that and your purpose, what your mission really is in putting a program together.
Yeah, and it seems like they are often a significant investment
Hmm.
in money, time, political capital, angst, the things that go along into running those. And I know you and our enterprise council have spent some time trying to figure out what the total system costs are, and it's not always easy to do that, but it is pretty apparent that those costs can be significant. And so I'm wondering, have you, or are there some things that you can think of where a program is really not the best solution?
Oh, well, we've seen it, right? So I guess you having a clear purpose, clarity on what you're trying to solve for is really important. So I guess if this is an easy button to just look sparkly and cool to attract new talent, that may get you that, but you also don't want buyer's remorse or bait and switch. So hopefully it's a sincere marketing plan in terms of what you provide in value to those prospects. Um, it can be a lot of money and perhaps a lot of wasted capacity if this is a firework, a flash that doesn't last very long. Uh, Again, maybe that's what you set out to do, but often that is not the case. I would say uh, if this is a pet project of a leader, or they think that because somebody else did it, we need to do it too, or if it's sort of trying to boost your hiring, just be wary. I have a silly analogy that I use sometimes, but there are a lot of folks and leaders who want to hang a pretty chandelier, if you think of this analogy. But if you have faulty wiring in the basement, it probably isn't going to be very effective, right? So there are some things that we need to just make sure we're really creating the right solution for the situation.
That makes sense. That makes sense. And is there, I guess, as you think about one of the things in evaluating a program's appropriateness, is there an assessment of time horizon in this, and how does that play into it? Like when you think about getting the results from a program that you might want, what sort of a time horizon generally should people who support a program or sponsor a program be expecting to get results in?
So I suppose that has a little to do with the design, what you're trying to produce with that, and over what period of time. But I'll use a very typical scenario across our membership, which is just If it's a 2-year program, obviously there are going to be milestones that you want to take a look at and make sure that you have some confidence builders along the way. So as you recruit your first class, there's probably milestones related to the quality of the folks that you're able to attract and so on. There are probably some mile markers along the way in terms of the in this scenario 2-year program, but realize that if you're really trying to build talent for destination roles after that 2 years, the full cycle is probably at least a good 4 years. There's a whole cycle of spinning creating the program. There's a 2-year cycle of the first products of your program, and of course, their post-program performance and what they contribute to the organization. Oftentimes, it's a much longer cycle. If you really want continuity, which if you're going to make a big investment, I would hope you do,
Yeah.
then obviously that's sort of an ongoing trickle in terms of what you're producing. And I, for one, I love the fact that, I can look back even before my time, but 25 to 30% of our most senior executives started their career on one of these programs. I think that shows staying power that not everybody will measure, not everybody will be able to measure, but that and that does not mean that all of that prior success means that we're doing everything right today. So there's always a payoff you can look back upon, but you're going to need at least a minimum of 4 or 5 years before you at least can see the total product of your work.
That makes a
It
lot of
does require
sense.
some staying power and patience, but that's why I think you have to build some milestones for confidence builders along the way. We
Yeah.
all want to know that we're on track.
Yeah, so having kind of the health metrics in place to make sure you're on track and maybe setting the expectation appropriately for time horizon. Are there some other commitments from the organization or stakeholders or senior people that you might recommend as being important to get before you move forward with investing in something as substantial as a new program?
Certainly this may vary for our different organizations, but I will say this, and I'm going to probably start with the worst case scenario, where an organization changes their mind and says, we're not going to do this anymore. The worst thing you could do is not finish what you started for those folks that are on the program.
Mm,
So follow through with those that you have made a commitment to first and foremost. Part of your commitment has to be to the people that trust you that this was a pathway they should join in the first place. Um, Beyond that, maybe just a little more basic, if we do a good job in defining what we're going after, then we probably need to also spec out what kind of commitment funding wise, support wise. Not everything is dollars. I mean, it seems like it sometimes when budget talks occur, but clarifying what this program will need to be successful could be cooperation. It could be some joint leadership or support or alignment from a couple different departments, let's say learning and development and TA and even some of the functional leadership that is desiring that pipeline.
mhm.
But really just make sure that you have the staying power to see those investments full cycle.
That makes a lot of sense too. Yeah. And so, I imagine that some of the people on our call here or joining us from LinkedIn would have gone through a situation where there is perhaps a senior stakeholder or a senior executive who has been through a program like this someplace,
Mm-hmm.
or perhaps has seen how successful you have been developing a program in some other function. And they go to you and they say, "Hey, we want a program. That looks really cool. I like the people that your program is producing. Build a program for me." How do you approach that in a strategic way so that you don't end up going down the route of building a program where perhaps the commitments that you need aren't likely to materialize? How do you handle that?
Great question. I would suppose I think there's design. If you're going to launch a new product to market, there are going to be some things that also require some homework. So I guess first, I would say thank you for your enthusiasm and your trust to come to me to talk about this. But together, we have to co-create something to really be successful. So I would say um, a little of the homework, I guess a few questions I would ask is to really just understand, how are you producing that talent today? What's working, what's not? Are there um, are there something is there something that's changed or that's going to radically ramp up, or new skills required or something else? Why is a rotational program uh, or an entry uh, or a rotational program better than an entry level program with great coaching and training and so on? So it may have to do with a little bit of volume, like how many folks will we be investing in at any given time? Over what does it take to develop those skills that you're looking for? What do we start with? Meaning, what's kind of the hiring profile or the starting profile, and what are we trying to create? So it's kind of input. It's like sci-fi. It's what's the inputs and the outputs, and what's the magic that has to happen between that. Uh,
And
Go ahead.
I
Sorry.
was just going to say, and what kind of answers would you need to get from that person to feel confident about moving forward with a program?
Um, I guess partly it's just to make sure that we don't have to create something more elaborate than what's really needed. I have had people come to me to say, we have this awesome idea. Just the scenario you said, we love what happens over there. We'd love this. And we'll hire one person every year so that we can produce one person every year. And that's not really much of a program, right? Or two every year. Or
Hmm.
it does not mean you have to be huge. It does not have to be a large scale program, but how systematic and repeatable do you need to be uh, for a program anyway, versus doing great development plans with a one or two at a time employee. And so I would just say, don't over engineer it if possible. So I would look at what is the demand, what is the meaning this, how many people per year might you need to be producing, or in other words, graduating from this program and going on to your destination roles. What's the geographic spread? So is it one in every country, or is there some concentration? Because there is a huge part of this is belonging and cohort, networking and other kinds of things. So what kind of synergies are possible in a program like this? And the same is true for the training aspects. Putting two people through a custom course, or even sending them off somewhere is a way different story than filling a classroom of 20 learners or 30 learners or something like that. So I guess
For
there's a
sure.
scale question to what that is. Now, you can look at the alternatives as well. Maybe this is something that doesn't really exist, and we're going to create it to build new skills or do something unique with it. It doesn't mean that there's a robotic answer to what is or isn't appropriate, but I would just say uh, in the design process, we just have to understand that this is something bespoke that is needed versus leveraging some of the existing courses or existing um, formats that would allow us to achieve the same results more economically or more sustainably.
So it sounds like there's definitely a sort of volume thing to consider. There's a
A little
scale
bit.
thing to consider there too. There's a value of a cohort feel perhaps, or a value of people going through an experience together element of it. That makes sense. Yeah. So I imagine, just as our last couple of questions here, I imagine too, and I hear people in our community bring this up often, where somebody who's maybe a little junior in their early talent development or early talent program management role in our community has been asked to go make a program. And they don't necessarily have the perspective to sit down and have a consultative call with someone to redirect them. They might be a little bit intimidated by, the CIO that they've been invited in to talk to. Um, how does someone navigate a situation where they have been asked to build a program for the wrong reasons, at least in their view, feels like the wrong reasons, or that there is an easier solution, a better solution, but they've been asked to build a program? Um, what advice do you have Excuse me, what advice do you have for somebody who finds him or herself in that situation?
Not hard to imagine. I would say first, I still would highly recommend be a credible expert here in terms of where you can help outline some of the factors that are important for you to know. You can't design a great product, and nor would we expect that of our marketing or engineering teams to design a project behind the transom, like throwing it over the transom and saying, design something great doesn't work in any other group either. So I think whether you need to take the initiative to do a little the detective work, meaning reach out to some of the prospective uh, leaders or functional leaders about what the need is, about what the potential benefits of something like this are, what the, I don't know, scrutiny they would put on something like this. Would they be interested in the product of your work in this regard? Um, I would say align yourself with some of the senior stakeholder, like, I would define the customer here as the those who are going to benefit from your work. But there are a lot of stakeholders, other people, other groups or departments that will have to contribute to the success of this. I mentioned before, either TA or learning and development, or it could be some other combination depending on the makeup of this brilliant idea from someone that you are going to bring to life. So before it's a yes, let me go create it, it's just, okay, let me do the homework that it takes to understand what is involved here. I don't, there are always impatient people in the world, but I think that trying to put together the right proposal, sometimes you have to put something sketch to, is this what you mean? Is this what you're looking for? This is what I heard. This is what I saw. This is what I um, uh, pick up on. But I need to validate that this is the true need, or this is the true. So doing your homework to try to facilitate some of that discussion, and not necessarily get stuck by the fact that you're sitting with a blank notepad and pen wondering what somebody wants, but try to initiate some of those conversations, even with some of the senior stakeholders, to do that. And it would always be helpful if you can get some alignment with a senior leader that can have some of the same decision-making factors in mind. They make sure that they know that you're thinking through the right cost elements, the right design elements, the right trade-offs of or maybe even alternatives that could be more compelling. So anyway, I guess diplomacy is needed. Sometimes it does take, if you're in a position where someone has great seniority over you, then maybe some of it is rolling up your sleeves to do some good consulting work yourself first, to at least outline some of the things that would be important to be successful, and get alignment from some senior stakeholders that can have your back as well.
Okay, that's helpful. Um,
It's
I
always
have
tricky, so
not always, right? There's no clear answer to navigating challenging conversations with people you might be intimidated by, right?
mhm.
So I have one final question for you, and then there are some questions that have come in through the chat that I'd like to share with you. And if
Sure.
others have questions they'd like to put in the chat, we'll make sure that we put them to Julie. So Julie, you have overseen and oversee many different programs throughout the organization. Um, in my view, it seems to me like you would have a pretty good idea of, well, let me simplify the question. What's the most important thing for a program to have to be successful? I mean, what is number one?
Hmm.
This is the most impactful thing in making a program successful.
It's tough to say there's one thing. Our world is combinations and hybrids of things, but I would say, look, I am a firm believer in structuring a solution here where it's sort of 70% experience, 20% exposure and mentoring, and learning from others, mentored uh, coaching, etc. And 10% of it is that formal classroom or formal learning. Um, I think it's really important to get the experience right. So skill building, breadth, uh, even deeper skill build, all of that has to do with the context of the context of the work. So getting the program experience right, what elements are really important to your company, what it's really important to what you're trying to produce or expose people to, are important. It's not all about shoving people through a classroom to check a box. It's not all about just hiring people and faking it till you make it with what you're going to do besides them actually doing a straight to desk sort of job. So I don't know that I totally boiled that down to one thing, Dan, but I would just say the program experience is really important to get right, which has to do with the kind of work that they're working on, the people leader or the assignment leader or the manager, whatever you call it, who's going to guide someone in their work and hopefully be that mentor in growth. I think that program experience is pretty important.
And that experience piece, that learning journey piece feels like the real art or part of the art of what people in our profession do, right? Trying to pull the right elements and concoct an experience that's going to spit out the kind of person that we're hoping our program builds.
That's
So,
right.
so thank you for answering my questions. There are a couple of questions that have come in that I'd like to share with you if you have time. Do you have time?
Sure,
Yeah.
sure,
Okay.
no problem.
Cool. So Jackie writes in, she says, "Thank you, Julie. What have been the most impactful, potentially overlooked post-program KPIs that you've seen?"
Mm. Well, I don't know what everybody's overlooked or not, but I would say post program, I want to know that people are progressing, ideally progressing farther faster than somebody who didn't go through the program. That is not all controllable, but I want to know that people are performing. I want to know that people are have, at least in our world, they're doing a rotational program to get exposure to different things so that they can zoom in on something, so that they are more committed to that work because they know what they're getting into. So I know it's probably not overlooked. People look at attrition or retention all the time, but just, are these programs and the skill building doing what they're intended to do, which is to help people be successful in those post-program jobs and in their further growth from there.
Yeah, I might even add too that sometimes the KPIs differ by program,
Hmm.
and so as a program manager, your job is to pick at KPIs that you won't overlook. To make sure that
That's
they
true. That's
they
true.
they
And you
make so
can't
much
have too
sense.
many things, but
Yeah,
yes. Yeah.
yeah, right, right. Thank you for that.
Hmm.
Brooks sent in a question saying, "Thank you very much for sharing your knowledge with us today. Looking at both the university relations internship co-op side of things, as well as the workforce-focused early talent development programs route, do you have any advice for a smaller organization that is considering which path to start with?"
So, Brooke, I'm assuming you mean like just is it the chicken or egg? Is it who do you hire in the first place versus okay, yeah, versus how do you develop them? Well, I will say this. One of the reasons my role sort of came together on both sides pretty quickly is that we realized that we could create the best development program ever, but if we didn't have the right people on it, it may not have been the same success rate. So I do think that there is weight in both camps. I would say, given that a program isn't the answer to everything, really understanding your hiring profile and doing a great job to get great talent certainly um, ranks up there. I think so. I guess if you want, if I would say maximize the footprint you have before you create something new, I guess would be my answer to that, even though you may learn a lot from that in terms of what else is next and what really needs to be the next thing in the Pareto to tackle. Hope that's okay.
Thank you. There's a question from Mariah saying, "Hi, Julie, really wonderful insights today. Thank you for sharing. I'm curious, how do you recommend creating a governance structure to determine what programs
Mm.
are supported by the early careers function and what programs are owned by the business?" This is a very good question. Do you
Yes, it
recommend
is.
only managing those programs through the early careers HR function, or do you see cases where you'd support business autonomy in creating small scale local programs that meet specific talent needs?
Oh goodness, we could have a whole day conversation about this one. So, so first, I will say I've had many different scenarios. I will not drag you through them. I'll say this. Today, my early careers team is the COE, and all of our headcount and program leaders live in the functions that benefit from the talent development. So while we orchestrate and support and enable quite a bit, we do a lot of training from the middle and recruiting from the middle, and frankly, a lot of coaching of program managers from the middle. I am not, I'm not opposed to the programs being beloved by their respective functions, that feeling that ownership by the different functions. The question is, how are we invaluable partners of those functions to get that job done well and to have some of that longer lasting impact? If they don't need us, then maybe we're not adding the right value. But from that perspective, I don't have to own everything for it to be good, is what I guess I'm trying to say. Now, for lots of different places to create their own little local programs, there's also a downside to too many bunnies. And one of my leaders a long time ago said, that it seems like programs are multiplying like rabbits. Well, they were for a while, and everybody wants to put this magic, pixie dust and create a program. So I would say there's probably a balancing act about some of those same questions we asked earlier. Where can we get synergy with a design that is a franchise at lots of local places? They have their own little franchise of a given program, so that the recipe is the same, the development is the same, there's synergy, but we're not necessarily sort of creating custom. Um, I don't know. I said rabbits before, and I can't get that out of my head. Doesn't have to be uh, a whole new designs every single time. So maybe there's some rinse and repeat that's a good thing, if even if it is to bring scale to more places, to bring that goodness that was invented somewhere to translate and to be helpful to for other locations too. So it may be an incomplete answer, but I think we can't be afraid of partnership, because we are not going to be the ones that all those great program members work for. How do we balance what our customers need and how we co-create that in some form? And different organizations, I'm sure, will have different approaches on that.
That's a great analogy. I like the franchise analogy. We have maybe a template that can be configured in certain ways to fit your operation, but here are some COE, things that we've learned that's where our value add is. We know these things to be good, and so here you
That's
go.
right.
Yeah.
And I will say that helps a lot with the organization, with managers moving around, with different leaders moving around. It helps with the brand of the program. It helps with the I know what that is identity of the programs, even with candidates. So internally and externally, having a stronger, I'll say franchise, allows you to scale up without it necessarily adding a lot of complexity.
Fantastic. Julie, thank you very much for sharing your wisdom today. We appreciate it. It's I'm sure hard won wisdom through your career, and so we appreciate having that given to us. Thank you for everybody for joining us today. If you're joining through LinkedIn, thanks for joining us. As I mentioned during the beginning of the call, the content of today's call will be made available in our library. I want to encourage everybody to stay connected to LDP Connect. We're doing a lot of things throughout the calendar year. Obviously, the conference that I mentioned earlier, but don't be a stranger. This is a great collegial group. You're doing cool things. We'd love to hear about that too. So thanks,
Absolutely.
everyone. Have a wonderful rest of your week.